It's just after midnight. 19-year-old Fiona Sinnott steps out of a dimly lit pub on the southeast coast of Ireland. The February wind bites at her skin. She laughs at something a friend says, and then she's gone. Not gone as in missing her buzz. Gone as in erased. By sunrise, her baby daughter is still asleep in her crib. Fiona's shoes are still by the door, and her family's world is about to split in two. The life before that night and the life after it. For 27 years, no one has seen her. No one has heard her voice, and no one has been charged. Now, the Garda have come back, not with questions, with shovels. They're tearing open the earth in a remote stretch of Wexford, searching for a body they've never been able to find, the body of Fiona Sinnott. The question is, why now? To answer that, we have to go back to the night she vanished, the South Star Bar, February 8th, 1998. Fiona's there with friends. She's laughing, playing pool, ordering drinks. Witnesses remember her as in good form. Just another Sunday night in a small Irish village. She leaves before midnight. She isn't alone. Locals see her walking with a man she knows well. Later, he'll tell police she came back to his place, that they talked, that she left on foot in the early hours. It's the kind of story that's easy to say, but impossible to prove. The next morning, Fiona's family start calling. She doesn't pick up. By evening, panic sets in. She'd never leave her baby. Never. When they go to her flat, it's like time has frozen. The baby's pram is still in the corner. The blanket is folded neatly over the side. There's no sign of a struggle and no sign of Fiona. The Garda search, but there's nothing to find. No sightings, no body, no trace. Just whispers. Some say she ran away. Others mutter about violence that night, about a man who didn't want her to leave. But without evidence, there's no case. Years turn to decades. Fiona's photo fades on the posters. Her daughter grows up without answers. And the people who might know the truth, they stay silent. Then, out of nowhere, the Garda announce they're back on the case. The press descends on Wexford. Cameras capture forensic tents in open fields. Officers sifting through dirt by hand. Something's changed. They won't say what, but you don't dig in the cold February grounds without a reason. And if that reason leads to Fiona Sinnott, this could be the moment Ireland's most enduring mystery is finally solved. Unless the truth is still buried deeper than anyone is willing to dig. The Garda aren't talking, not about why they're here, not about what they expect to find in this patch of Wexford soil, but the way they move, the way they work in tight silence tells its own story. This is not a routine sweep. This is a targeted dig. They believe Fiona Sinnott is here. For 27 years, her case has been one of Ireland's great unanswered questions. And now, suddenly, it's the focus of an intensive search operation, with national headlines screaming her name again. It's not the first time her name has made the papers. Back in '98, every newsroom in Ireland carried the same haunting headline: "Young mother missing, foul play suspected." The small village of Broadway became the center of a storm. TV crews on narrow lanes, reporters knocking on neighbors' doors, theories spinning faster than facts. What police did have was a timeline, or rather, the outline of one. Last confirmed sighting, Fiona walking out of the South Star Bar with a man she trusted. Last reported interaction, he claims she left his home early the next morning, on foot, into the cold. First sign of trouble, Fiona's baby left alone in her flat, untouched bottles of formula lined on the counter. Beyond that, nothing but questions. The man she was last seen with was interviewed. His version of events never changed. But without a witness, without physical evidence, without a body, the case stalled. And here's where the trail takes its first bizarre turn. Months after her disappearance, locals began whispering about a field on the edge of town, a remote place, overgrown, hard to reach unless you knew where you were going. People swore they saw lights there late at night, a car idling, shadows moving. The Garda looked, but found nothing conclusive. And with no crime scene, the whispers faded into village folklore. Until now. Because this dig site is within walking distance of that same stretch of land. The difference? This time, they've brought in specialist cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, and forensic archaeologists. They are not here on a hunch. Still, the Garda remain tight-lipped. "We are following up on new information," is all they'll say to the cameras. But to Fiona's family, that's enough to reignite a fragile hope and a dangerous fear. Hope that maybe they'll finally get answers. Fear that those answers will confirm the nightmare they've lived with for nearly 3 decades. Because here's the truth about cold cases. People talk over time. Relationships change. Secrets slip. And someone, somewhere, finally decides to speak. Did someone break their silence after 27 years? Did a fragment of truth resurface, enough to bring the Garda back to Broadway? Because the thing about secrets in a small village is they never really go away. And if the ground here holds the remains of Fiona Sinnott, it will also hold the key to the night she vanished and the person who made sure she never came home. Before she became a headline, before her name was etched into Ireland's list of unsolved disappearances, Fiona Sinnott was simply Fiona, a young woman with a shy smile, a quick laugh, and a world that revolved around her baby girl. She was just 19 years old when she had her daughter. Friends say motherhood seemed to come naturally to her. She didn't have much, but what she did have, she poured into that child. Her time, her energy, her love. People in Broadway remember her as the girl who was always rushing but always smiling. She'd be seen walking to the local shops, balancing grocery bags in one hand and her little one perched on her hip. Sometimes she'd stop to chat with neighbors, never in a hurry when it came to people she knew. She had her challenges, of course. Fiona had recently moved into a small flat, away from some of her closest family. Money was tight, but she'd started talking about plans, going back to school, maybe finding a steady job in Wexford town. There was a quiet determination in her that those close to her noticed. Then came the night of February 8th, 1998. A normal Sunday evening turned into the last time anyone would see Fiona alive. She met friends at the South Star Bar, a small but lively place where locals gathered to trade stories and shake off the winter chill. She wasn't dressed to draw attention, just a simple jacket, hair tied back, but she had that natural way of standing out in a room. That night, Fiona laughed. She played pool. She bought a round of drinks. There was no sign, not a flicker of worry or fear that she was about to step off the map of the living. Sometime before closing, she left with a man she knew. Witnesses say it looked friendly, casual. She didn't appear in distress. They walked out into the cool night air together. And then, Fiona was gone. By morning, her flat was silent. The baby was there, unharmed, but hungry. Bottles of formula sat lined neatly on the counter, untouched. Her handbag was on the table. Her coat was draped over a chair. For her family, those small details were like daggers. This wasn't a woman who had chosen to leave. This was a mother who had been stopped, violently, suddenly, from returning to the life she loved. Her sister recalls the sickening moment she realized Fiona's voice wouldn't be on the other end of the phone again. "I knew," she said later. "From that first day, I knew." As days turned into weeks, the search spread. Posters with Fiona's face were taped to shop windows, bus stops, and pub walls. Volunteers combed fields and riverbanks, but no matter how far they looked, Fiona wasn't there. The only constant was the ache left behind. For her child, who would grow up never knowing her. For her parents, who would spend decades clinging to fading photographs. For her siblings, who learned to live with the shadow of a crime that refused to fade. But even now, when you speak to them, Fiona isn't remembered for the way she vanished. She's remembered for the way she was. Generous, stubborn, fiercely protective. A young woman who deserved more than to become a cold file in a Garda evidence room. Which is why, when the Garda showed up again all these years later, with spades, forensic tents, and a team of specialists, it felt like something powerful had shifted. This time, they might be digging for more than bones. They might be digging for justice. For nearly 3 decades, the name Fiona Sinnott has been a ghost in Wexford, a whispered reminder of a disappearance that stubbornly resisted answers. But in early 2025, something happened that jolted the case back to life. On a gray February morning, Garda forensic vans rolled quietly into a stretch of rural land outside Broadway. To passing motorists, it might have looked like routine roadwork. A few tents, a digger, some men in high-vis jackets. But to those who had been following Fiona's case, it was something else entirely. The Garda weren't there for maintenance. They were there to dig. The land in question was no random patch of soil. It lay close to where Fiona was last seen alive, and it had long been whispered about in pub corners and private conversations. Locals had traded theories about what might be buried there for years, but nothing concrete had ever been done. Until now. And then came the detail that changed everything. The dig site wasn't just close to Fiona's last known location. It was on ground once connected to a man who had been questioned in the original investigation. The Garda set up cordons and moved methodically. They brought in cadaver dogs, forensic archaeologists, even ground-penetrating radar. They weren't searching in a vague, hopeful way. They were targeting specific coordinates, almost as if they'd been tipped off. Word spread fast. By afternoon, journalists were gathering at the edge of the cordon, cameras trained on every movement. Former neighbors of Fiona's came to watch, some leaning on fences, with arms folded, faces tight with the weight of old memories. And then came the whisper they'd found something. At first, Garda officials refused to confirm. Standard procedure, they said. The excavation was part of ongoing inquiries. But the way officers moved, huddled, purposeful, shielding certain areas from view, told another story. Was it a piece of clothing, a fragment of bone, something else entirely? The fact was, whatever they'd uncovered had to be significant enough to bring the full weight of the Garda's cold case team into the field. And yet, here's where the twist deepened. No one was arrested. Not yet. Despite the potential breakthrough, Garda insisted the search was only one aspect of the renewed investigation. They refused to name suspects. They refused to say whether the object of their search was even human remains. That silence only fed the speculation. Locals remembered that in 1998, there had been talk of a fight the night Fiona vanished, talk of a man she had been seen with, talk of certain areas that might hide dark secrets. But without evidence, it had all dissolved into rumor. Now, 27 years later, that rumor had been given a physical location, a set of digging hands, and a promise that this time they were turning every stone. The family kept their own quiet vigil. Fiona's sister told reporters she had learned not to get her hopes up too high, but admitted that you can't help it. The thought that maybe finally something might be found, it was almost too much to put into words. And while the Garda worked the soil, another line of inquiry was moving in parallel. Interviews with people who were there that night, some of whom had never spoken before. One former resident, now living abroad, reportedly came forward after seeing renewed media coverage. And according to one journalist, that person's statement could shift the lens on the entire case. This was no longer just an old, unsolved mystery. This was a live, breathing investigation, one with shovels in the ground and fresh voices on record. But the most haunting part, even as the Garda dug into that damp, silent earth, some locals whispered that the real answers might lie somewhere else entirely, in a place no search team had ever gone. And if that was true, Fiona Sinnott's story might still have more shadows to reveal.
The excavation in Broadway had electrified the investigation, but almost as quickly as it began, the search ended. Garda trucks rolled out, tents were taken down, and the site returned to its quiet, rural stillness. Officials offered only a single statement. Lines of inquiry remain active. For the public, that wasn't enough. In the absence of clear answers, contradictions began to surface. First, there were whispers that nothing had been found at all, that the search had turned up items of interest, but nothing directly tied to Fiona Sinnott. Yet other sources claimed a small bag of material had been quietly taken from the site under heavy cover. Second, a journalist following the case noted that certain witnesses, once corroborative, were suddenly declining interviews. These were people who had spoken freely about the events of February 8, 1998, the last night Fiona was seen alive. But now, with Garda attention renewed, they were keeping silent. Why the sudden change? That night, Fiona had been spotted leaving a local pub, the Harbor Bar, around midnight. She was last seen walking in the direction of her flat, just a few hundred yards away. She never made it home. Some claim they saw her with a man, others insisted she left alone. Those accounts had never been reconciled. And then there was the rumor of an argument, a heated one, sometime before she vanished. This had been part of the original case file, but without hard proof, it was just another theory, among many. Now, nearly 3 decades later, Garda detectives were quietly re-interviewing those same people, this time with sharper questions. Some were asked about specific locations, vehicles, even clothing worn that night. It raised an unsettling possibility. Had the Garda uncovered new forensic evidence that tied directly to a person of interest? Adding to the tension, an investigative podcast covering Fiona's case revealed it had obtained access to portions of the original witness statements. Some of the details were chilling, like one account describing a woman matching Fiona's description standing near a rural laneway in the early hours, looking distressed. That location was less than a 10-minute drive from the excavation site. If that sighting was true, it meant Fiona may never have made it home after the pub. It also meant someone had the opportunity to intercept her in a dark, isolated stretch of countryside. But then came the most unsettling development of all. An anonymous letter was sent to a local newspaper, a short typed message claiming to know exactly what happened to Fiona Sinnott. The writer offered no proof, but included one specific detail about her clothing that had never been made public. Gardaí have neither confirmed nor denied whether they believe the letter is genuine. Still, the timing, just weeks after the excavation, was impossible to ignore. Public interest reached a boiling point. Radio shows in Wexford devoted full hours to call-ins from listeners sharing their theories. Some insisted the killer was still in the area. Others believe Fiona's remains were far from the search site, buried deep enough to never be found. The Sinnott family, once again in the spotlight, issued a heartfelt statement. "We will not rest until Fiona is brought home. Whoever knows what happened, it's time to speak." Yet as the weeks passed, no arrests were made.
No new press conferences were called, and the air of mystery that had haunted this case since 1998 only thickened, which left one burning question. If the excavation was driven by new intelligence, what exactly had Gardaí been told? And if they truly believed they were digging in the right place, why had they left so quickly? The answers, it seemed, were still out of reach, hidden beneath the same silence that had swallowed Fiona's story for 27 years. 27 years is a long time to live without answers. For Fiona Sinnott's family, it's been a lifetime of questions with no resolution. Every phone call could be the one. Every news headline could be the breakthrough. And yet, for almost 3 decades, the silence has been deafening. The reopening of the case in 2025 changed that, at least for a while. Gardaí in white forensic suits combed through the excavation site, carrying away sealed evidence bags. The media camped outside. Locals whispered about what they'd seen, and for the first time in years, hope surged that Fiona might finally be coming home. But official statements remained frustratingly vague. When pressed, investigators confirmed only that material of interest had been recovered. No arrests, no public naming of suspects, and crucially, no confirmation that the remains found were human. This deliberate ambiguity left a vacuum, and in that vacuum, speculation thrived. Some believed Gardaí were building a watertight case, waiting until they could match DNA before moving forward. Others feared it was yet another false dawn, a lead that would fade into nothingness. Yet, there are details that refuse to be ignored. Multiple sources claim the excavation site lay within a few kilometers of where Fiona was last confirmed alive. It was remote, shielded from view by dense hedgerows. If you didn't know it was there, you'd never stumble across it. That fits the profile of a disposal site chosen by someone with intimate local knowledge. There's also the troubling fact that at least one of the early persons of interest has never been officially cleared. Over the years, their name has circulated in whispers, in pubs, in online forums, in the back rooms of Garda stations. The reopening of the case brought that name back into the conversation. Still, without charges, the law remains clear. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Fiona's story has also been shaped by the media's renewed interest. Primetime segments, anniversary features, and long-form documentaries have reintroduced her face to a younger audience who weren't even born when she vanished. The effect is powerful. People who thought they'd forgotten the details are now speaking up, sharing memories, digging through old photo albums. Some of these new tips have led Gardaí to re-interview witnesses from 1998. A few of those witnesses, now older and perhaps less fearful, have hinted that they might know more than they told police back then. Which raises an uncomfortable question. Did fear or loyalty keep the truth buried for nearly 3 decades? The theories have never really changed, but they've evolved in detail. That Fiona died after a violent confrontation and her remains were hidden quickly. That her death was accidental, but those involved covered it up out of panic. That she crossed paths with someone who intended from the outset that she wouldn't survive the night. Each theory points to a different chain of events, but all of them hinge on one thing. Somebody knows where Fiona is. The 2025 excavation could be the moment that changes everything, or the moment the case slips further into cold case limbo. If DNA tests confirm the remains belong to Fiona, it will finally give her family the chance to bury her, but it will also open the door to fresh legal proceedings, perhaps even the arrest of a suspect who's been walking free for 27 years. For now, the Gardaí remain tight-lipped. They know that if they move too soon, they risk losing the case in court. If they wait too long, they risk losing the cooperation of witnesses. It's a balance as delicate as the fragments they're pulling from the soil. Fiona's family have been through this before, hope raised only to be dashed, and yet they continue to speak her name in every interview, every appeal. "We just want her home," her sister said recently. "That's all we've ever wanted." That longing is what keeps the case alive in the public imagination. It's what draws strangers to post flowers at the edge of the excavation site. It's why her face still looks out from weathered missing person posters. And it's why, even now, 27 years later, the question refuses to die. What happened to Fiona Sinnott? Did she leave the pub that night with someone she trusted, only for trust to turn to betrayal? Did an argument spiral out of control in the quiet dark? Or was she targeted by someone who had been planning this for longer than anyone realized? Somewhere out there, the truth exists. It's buried in someone's memory, in a piece of overlooked evidence, maybe even in the soil that Gardaí sifted through in 2025. And when that truth finally comes out, it won't just solve a case. It will end a story that has haunted a family and the community for a generation. But until then, Fiona's voice is silent. Her last steps are lost to the night, and the person or people responsible for her disappearance may still be walking free. The final words go to her mother, spoken in a quiet interview years ago. "Someone knows where my daughter is, and one day they'll have to live with telling the truth." The camera fades to black, and then in the silence, a final question hangs in the air. What do you really think happened that night?